Joining me now is Travis Weber, Vice President of Policy and Government Affairs here. I wanted to bring him in on this and the Equality Act. Travis, the good news out of the Supreme Court with them deciding to take this Mississippi case, because this really does set up, as I mentioned, a number of states have already passed what we call trigger laws, that once this goes back to the states, they've already decided abortion will be outlawed.
And Tony, that's right. A number of states passed these laws. Really, if you look across the landscape on pro-life legislation, there's all sorts of laws that have reached various stages of successful challenges to them in the courts that would be allowed to stay in place depending on what the court does in response to the Dobbs case when it finally hands down the decision on this Mississippi law. So I do think we're at a hopeful moment here, both with trigger laws and other state statutes that might be positively affected by the Mississippi case when the court decides it.
And another topic I want to bring up, Travis, I was out end of last week on a prayer and planning retreat that I like to go on quarterly just to think through some things and plan for the next quarter. But on Friday, an article came out in Fox News suggesting that we were working with other religious groups on a compromise on the Equality Act. And we've been very clear on this. While we work with all members of Congress to point out problems with legislation and give direction, there can be no compromise on the Equality Act because of its attack on our First Amendment freedom.
Yeah, Tony, that's right. Any reports that we're looking at compromising, to use that word, or take other words, substitute some alternative to the Equality Act. FRC has always rejected such positions with regard to the Equality Act, and we still do. We're still going to engage with anyone on Capitol Hill or elsewhere who wants to know our position and our views on the Equality Act. But as you know, as we talked about a lot, the Equality Act is tainted to its core, pose incredible problems for issues across the board, not only religious freedom, but the areas of science and healthcare affecting the LGBT community themselves. It would expand abortion and ingrain all sorts of coercive policies throughout federal law. And whatever alternatives are being floated, fairness for all, any other options like that, pose similar challenges. They largely are the same nuts and bolts as the Equality Act. So when we look at these bills, there really is no solution that could be found in terms of tweaking them or modifying them. They need to be defeated and stopped. And members who want a good bill to get behind need to get behind one of the solid religious liberty proposals we've supported and other religious freedom advocates have supported in the past.
Once again, President Biden calling for the passage of the Equality Act, which is 75% of it's focused on LGBTQ, and which would torpedo religious freedom, including the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. But as you pointed out, it also deals with the issue of abortion, elevating it to a fundamental right, which would undercut even what the court is deciding on Roe v. Wade.
Yeah, Tony, it would expand abortion access through the way it interprets sex non-discrimination to include pregnancy. So the Equality Act, problematic from the perspective of the life issue for us, from the perspective of how it distorts the family and promotes coercive policies that undermine the family, and how it torpedoes religious freedom, really steamrolled and flattens the concept of religious freedom by gutting the Religious Freedom Restoration Act from being applicable in this context, and providing no way forward for religious freedom to prevail once the Equality Act passes.
All right, Travis Weber, out of time. We'll leave it there. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Tony.